The last thing I expected to find on a Tuesday morning was my name missing from a document I had signed 4 years ago. I was standing in the back office of the bakery, the one I had rebuilt from the ground up, the one that smelled like butter and cinnamon at 6 in the morning, the one that had taken every weekend I had for the better part of 4 years when my phone rang. It was our main supplier. He wasn't calling me to chat. He was calling because the new ownership paperwork had come through, and he wanted to confirm the updated billing contact. He said my brother's name. He said it like it was normal, like it had always been that way. I told him I'd call him back. I sat down in the chair I had bought with my own money and looked at the walls I had repainted myself and thought about the conversation I was going to have with my parents. And then I thought about whether I even wanted to have it at all. Here's what I want you to understand before I tell you the rest of this. I am not someone who complains. I never have been. Growing up, I was the one who figured things out. My brother was younger by 6 years, and my parents treated that gap like it explained everything every time he failed a class, every time he quit a job, every time he needed something. They never said out loud that he needed more from them. They just gave it, quietly and consistently, and I was quiet and consistent right back. I learned early that being reliable meant being invisible. I told myself that was fine. I told myself I didn't need the recognition. I just needed to know I was doing the right thing. When my parents' bakery started failing in the spring, I was 26 and working a full-time job in marketing. I had savings. I had weekends. I had the particular kind of energy that comes from not yet understanding how finite your time actually is. My mother called me one evening, and her voice had that careful flatness she used when something was wrong, but she didn't want to say so directly. She told me the bakery had been losing money for 2 years. She told me my father's knees were getting worse, and he couldn't be on his feet all day anymore. She didn't ask me for anything. She didn't have to. I came in that Saturday. I want to tell you what I found when I walked in. The display case had a crack across the top panel that had been taped over with packing tape. The espresso machine was running at the wrong temperature. The supplier contracts hadn't been renegotiated in 5 years. The social media accounts hadn't been posted to in 8 months. The regulars still came, but just barely, and mostly out of habit. My father stood behind the counter with the look of a man who had been trying not to let anyone see how tired he was. My mother moved around the kitchen the way she always had, quickly, purposefully, but when I looked at the books, I understood why her hands never stopped moving. She was trying to outrun the numbers. I didn't say anything dramatic. I just started. I renegotiated the supplier contracts first. That alone saved them $400 a month. I fixed the espresso machine with a YouTube tutorial and a $40 part. I replaced the display case panel on a Saturday morning before we opened. I redesigned the menu to cut the items that cost more to make than they earned and doubled down on the 4 things my mother made better than anyone. I ran the social media myself from my apartment at night. By the end of the first year, the bakery was breaking even. By the end of the second, it was profitable. Not dramatically, not extravagantly, but solidly and consistently, in a way it had never been before. I put in roughly $40,000 of my own savings over those 4 years. Some of it was direct equipment, a new POS system, a renovation to the seating area in year 3. Some of it was indirect hours I spent working without pay, weekends I gave up, a vacation I canceled, a relationship that quietly fell apart because I was never available, and eventually someone stopped asking. I didn't keep a running total at the time. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't doing it to be owed. I was doing it because it was my family, and they needed help, and I was the one who could help. That is what you do. My brother visited maybe 6 times in those 4 years. He would come in on a Sunday, sit at the counter, eat something my mother had made, and talk about ideas he had for the business. Big ideas, vague ideas, ideas that would require a lot of money and a lot of time, and somehow never seemed to involve him doing either of those things. My parents would listen with a particular kind of attention they never quite turned on me, nodding along like he was describing something visionary. Once, he suggested we open a second location. I was in the back doing inventory. I didn't say anything. I wrote down the numbers and I went home and I told myself it didn't matter. I'd like to ask you something, and I want you to think about it honestly. Have you ever worked that hard for something and then pretended, even to yourself, that you didn't care whether it was noticed? Because I was pretending. I just didn't know it yet. The supplier called on a Tuesday. My brother had been made the sole owner of the bakery 6 weeks earlier, according to the paperwork. My parents had gone to an attorney. They had done it quietly. They had not told me. The reason I know the date is because I went back through my phone records later and found that 6 weeks earlier, on a Thursday evening, my mother had called me to ask how the espresso machine was running and whether I thought we should add a seasonal drink for the fall. I had told her the machine was running well. I had told her pumpkin spice sold well everywhere, but we could do something more interesting, maybe a brown butter latte. She had said that sounded nice. She had not mentioned the attorney. She had not mentioned my brother. She had not mentioned that she was calling me for operational advice about a business she had already given to someone else. I sat in that chair for a long time. Then I picked up my bag, turned off the office light, and walked out through the kitchen. My mother was at the counter. She looked up when she heard me come through. I looked at her for a moment. She looked back at me. Neither of us said anything. I walked out the front door and got in my car and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before I could drive. I did not call them that night. I did not call them the next day. I needed to think, and I needed to think clearly, without the particular fog that comes from being in a room with people who love you and have also just taken something from you without asking. I needed to understand what I was actually dealing with before I said a single word. What I was dealing with was this. My parents had made a decision about my brother's future using a business that I had saved, sustained, and built with 4 years of my own labor and $40,000 of my own money. They had made that decision without consulting me. They had not offered to compensate me. They had not offered any explanation. They had simply proceeded, quietly and efficiently, the way my mother moved around the kitchen trying to get it done before anyone could see the numbers. I thought about the supplier on the phone. I thought about how easily he had said my brother's name. I thought about how my brother had visited 6 times. I thought about the packing tape on the display case, and the espresso machine, and the supplier contracts, and the $40,000, and the vacation I didn't take, and the relationship that ended, because I was never available. Eventually, someone stopped asking. And then I thought, if the business belongs to my brother, then the business belongs to my brother. All of it. Every part of it. Including the parts that are hard. I had 3 ongoing supplier relationships that operated on terms I had personally negotiated. 2 of them had my personal cell number as the primary contact. One of them, the flour and dry goods supplier, who accounted for about 30% of their ingredient cost, had a contract that renewed annually and was coming up in 3 weeks. I had been planning to renegotiate it. I had already done the research. I had the numbers pulled. I had a meeting scheduled. I canceled the meeting. I also had the bakery's social media accounts linked to my personal email because I had set them up when my parents didn't know how. I had the login for the POS system because I had bought it and set it up. I had a folder on my laptop with 4 years of financial records, vendor contacts, seasonal sales data, and everything else a person would need to actually run the business intelligently rather than just show up and hope. I didn't sabotage anything. I want to be very clear about that. I didn't delete files or cancel orders or do anything to cause immediate harm. I simply stopped doing the things I had been doing. I stopped answering calls about the bakery. I stopped managing the supplier relationships. I stopped posting to social media. I stopped coming in on Saturdays. I stopped being the person who figured things out. Because that person, apparently, was working for a business she didn't own. 2 weeks after I stopped, my father called. I let it go to voicemail. He said they needed to talk to me, and could I come by on Sunday? I did not go by on Sunday. My mother called the following Thursday. I listened to her voicemail twice. She said she knew I must be busy, and she was just checking in. And the fall menu was coming up, and did I have any ideas? I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time. Then I put it down. A month later, my aunt called. She called from her landline, which she only used when she considered something serious. She told me my mother had been crying. She told me the bakery was struggling. She told me the flour supplier had changed the terms at renewal because there was nobody to negotiate, and the new rate was significantly higher. She told me my brother was overwhelmed. She told me all of this with the tone of someone delivering news that she expected would move me to action. I said, "The bakery belongs to my brother now." She was quiet for a moment. I said, "If they need help running it, they should ask the owner." She told me I was being cold. She told me family didn't work like a business transaction. She told me that my parents had made a decision out of love. They wanted to give my brother something stable, something to build his life on, something he could hold on to. I asked her when they had made that decision. She didn't answer. I asked her how much of that stability had been built by me. She said that wasn't the point. I said it was exactly the point. I said I had given 4 years and $40,000 to something that was handed to someone else without a conversation, without compensation, without even the courtesy of being told it was happening. I said I found out from a supplier. She didn't have anything to say to that. I want to pause here and tell you something about what I was feeling during this period, because I think people assume that walking away from something like this feels like anger, or like triumph, or like relief. It didn't feel like any of those things, at least not cleanly. It felt like grief. It felt like the specific kind of grief that comes when you lose something you didn't fully realize you had, which was the belief that the people who were supposed to see you actually did. I had spent 4 years in that bakery. I had been there at 6 in the morning in February. I had been there the afternoon my mother had a migraine and couldn't come in. I had been there the week my father's knees were so bad he couldn't stand, and I covered every single shift. I had been there not because I was asked, not because I was paid, but because it was mine in every way that mattered to me. And what I had to grieve was the understanding that it had never been mine in the way that mattered to them. There's a particular kind of person in every family. You probably know one. Maybe you are one. They're the one who shows up, the one who handles it, the one everyone calls when something goes wrong, because they know she'll figure it out. Nobody worries about her because she never gives them reason to. She's fine. She always lands on her feet. She doesn't need anything. And because she doesn't ask, nobody thinks to give. And eventually, if that person is lucky, she figures out that being needed and being valued are two completely different things. I was lucky. I figured it out. My brother called me in November. It was the first time he had called me directly since all of this started. His voice had the specific quality of someone who has been prepared for a conversation and is not entirely comfortable with what they were told to say. He told me he knew things had been tense. He told me he wanted to talk. He told me he could use my help with a few things, just getting up to speed. Just the supplier stuff. Just until he had a handle on it. He said he'd always respected what I'd done for the family. He said Mom and Dad just wanted everyone to be okay. I asked him if he knew, before the paperwork was filed, what I had put into the business. He was quiet. I said, I'm not asking to make you feel bad. I'm asking because I want to know if this was something that was talked about, or something that just happened. He said he thought they assumed I would be okay. He said I always was. I thought about that for a long time after we hung up. I always was. As if being okay was something I did automatically. As if it didn't cost anything. As if 4 years and $40,000 was just the natural output of being the kind of person who figures things out. I told him I hoped the business did well. I meant that genuinely. And then I did not call him back. In December, I heard through my aunt that the bakery had lost 2 of its regular wholesale accounts, a small hotel nearby, and a cafe that had been buying pastries from them for years. Both of them had been relationships I managed personally. When I stopped returning calls, they found other suppliers. That's how business works. You cannot run a business on charm and hope. You need someone who actually does the work. And the work had walked out the door with me. By January, the bakery had cut its hours. By February, they had let go of one of the part-time staff. My aunt sent me a text that said simply, "You must be happy now." I stared at it for a while. I thought about what it would mean to be happy about this. A business my parents had built 20 years ago. A business my mother had poured herself into. A business that smelled like butter and cinnamon in the morning. I didn't want it to fail. I had never wanted it to fail. I had spent 4 years making sure it wouldn't. But I was not going to keep doing that work for free while my name was erased from everything except the responsibility. I texted my aunt back. I'm not happy. I'm just done. My parents called me together in March. They used my father's phone, and I could hear them both, which meant they were sitting next to each other the way they always did when they were presenting a united front. My mother's voice was careful. My father's voice was tired. They said they wanted to explain. They said they had thought I was stable, established, that I didn't need the way my brother needed. They said they thought I would understand. They said they hadn't realized how it would look. They said they were sorry. I listened to all of it. Then I said, I don't need the bakery. You're right that I'm stable. But stability isn't something that happened to me. It's something I built, the same way I built your business back up, with work and time and money and choices. And when you made a decision about something I had invested 4 years of my life in, without telling me, without asking me, without even acknowledging what I had given you, didn't just take the business. You told me what my contribution was worth to you. My mother started to say something. I said, I love you. I'm not disappearing from this family. But I am not coming back to that bakery. And I need you to understand that those two things are true at the same time. I don't know exactly what happened after that, because I wasn't there for it. What I know is this: the bakery was listed for sale in April. My brother found a buyer by summer. The sale price was less than it would have been 3 years earlier, before the wholesale accounts fell apart, before the staff reductions, before the hours got cut. But it sold. I heard it sold to a young couple who wanted to renovate and rebrand. I hope they do well. I genuinely do. My relationship with my parents is different now. It is quieter and more honest than it was before, which is a strange thing to say about something that hurt as much as this did. We have dinners. We talk. There is a carefulness between us that wasn't there when I was the one holding everything up. But there is also something more real in it. When my father asks me how I'm doing now, he waits for the actual answer. My brother and I are cordial. Not close, but cordial. He started working for a distribution company in the fall, and by all accounts, he is doing fine. We text on birthdays. We are both polite about it. I think we both understand what was said and what wasn't said, and what can't be unsaid. And we have decided to let that understanding sit quietly between us, rather than tear anything else apart. I still have the folder on my laptop. 4 years of financial records, vendor contacts, seasonal sales data, everything. I never deleted it. I don't know why exactly. Maybe because it's the most complete record that exists of what I did. Maybe because on the days when I second-guess myself, and there have been those days, more than I expected, I can open it up and see the numbers and remember that I am not misremembering. The work was real. The cost was real. The decision to stop was real. Healing, I've learned, is not a single moment. It's not the phone call where you finally say what you mean, or the night you stop waiting for an apology that comes too late, or even the morning you wake up and realize you are genuinely okay. It's something slower and less dramatic than all of that. It's the Wednesday afternoon when you catch yourself making plans for the future without factoring in whether your family approves. It's the moment you realize that being the person who figures things out is a gift, and it belongs to you, and it was never theirs to give away. I have a small apartment with good light in the mornings. I have a job I'm good at. I have savings I am no longer spending on other people's stability. I have weekends, and some Saturday mornings, when I'm at the farmer's market or the coffee shop near my apartment, I'll walk past a bakery and smell butter and cinnamon, and I'll feel something not quite grief, not quite relief. Something in between. Something that says, I know what that cost, and I paid it, and I chose, finally, to spend that currency somewhere else. That feels like enough. That feels, actually, like everything.